Hello and welcome to Bridging Beings. I'm Evie and I'm back to the channel after a brief hiatus. My life has been pretty busy these days. I'm a part-time student, a full-time employee, and an animal intuitive, so finding time to fit all of that in can be a challenge to be sure. So thank you for bearing with me. And also, apologies for my voice. I strained my vocal cords at a conference. It was a very loud conference and I had to sort of talk over the noise for 3 days, so if you can just bear with my voice while I'm returning back to normal, I would really appreciate that as well. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for being here. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and reaches other people who are also interested in this type of content and who may want to get a private reading for their own animal partner. Also, a number of folks have asked if I take payment for these readings. I am just starting to do that. I'm being asked to participate in conferences and some things like that. So I'm not exactly sure what final form that will take right now, as I've never really charged for readings in prior years. I do have a Bridging Beings PayPal account that you can donate to if you feel so moved. I will put the link to that in the main channel description. And I guess, depending on the volume, I may create a menu of reading options. I'm not sure, but for now, if you care to donate, feel free. If not, that's fine too. My goal always was to make these readings accessible and allow people who want to contribute monetarily to do so while not burdening those who don't have the means or just prefer not to. It's a balance I'm still learning to create, so, bear with me, please. I'm a little bit behind on getting the readings up to YouTube, to be honest. I have several of them, and there's some really great ones, really exciting readings to follow. So hopefully you guys will tune in. Today's reading is one that's been sitting with me for a while, as I said, because it unfolded in real time across multiple sessions over the course of a real transition in one horse's life. And what came through initially changed dramatically toward the end, and definitely changed every time I connected. So if you've been watching videos on Bridging Beings for a while and listened to my other videos, you may already know our next guest, not directly, but through someone you've met before. So this is Zena. Zena is our animal partner that we'll be reading for today. And Zena has shared part of her life with Clyde. And for those of you who have watched the Clyde video, Clyde is the former retired police horse, the steady Eddie, the horse that's built like a truck and sort of carrying that quiet, everybody calm down dad energy. And Priscilla is both Clyde's human partner and Zena's human partner, and that's who we'll be reading today, Zena. Priscilla reached out to me about Zena because she wanted to know more about her strange behavior. And Zena is a horse Priscilla has shared her daily life with for the past 4 years. And when I mean daily, every day, consistent presence, consistent care, but something had been shifting and Zena was showing signs of unhappiness, some behavioral changes, stress, and Priscilla, just being the kind human partner that she is, wanted to have me tune into that and see if I could pick anything up. To give a little context, Priscilla has been pondering moving Zena for quite some time. Her goal was to give Zena more space, better interaction with other horses, and just generally more room to move around. However, Priscilla's dilemma was proximity. She found a place, a proper herd environment, full turnout, but it's 3 hours away. And though she believed that would be better for Zena, it's 3 hours away and she wouldn't be able to see her every day. But still, Zena would have more space, more companions, and more of what a horse actually needs, which is just to be a horse, roam around, and have horse time. She didn't really want to give up the daily contact that she and Zena had built over the 4 years, but she wanted to do what was best for Zena in the long run. She knew this would stress Zena and that there was a possibility Zena would feel that she'd been given away or abandoned, and Priscilla didn't want that to happen. So she asked me to connect and ask Zena a couple of questions. First of all, is this the right decision? Would Zena be happy? And the question underneath all the other questions, does Zena know that this contemplated move is coming from a place of love? What followed wasn't a single reading, it was actually 3. One before the move, one during the transition, and then one after Zena had settled in. And the story that emerged across all 3 is not what I expected when I first tuned in. And I think I alluded to that a little earlier in the video. So the first thing I felt when I connected with Zena was calm, profound groundedness, almost studied. She came through with a kind of your best girlfriend energy, the person you can tell anything to without fear of judgment. She was curious and analytical, someone who examines a situation and quietly teases it apart just from genuine interest alone, just wanting to understand. The word that came up for me as I was reading her is philosopher. If horses could be philosophers, I thought Zena would definitely be one. She acknowledged that there had been turbulent times in her past before Priscilla entered her life, but she wasn't upset by any of those. She'd processed them, kind of filed them away and moved on. She came through as someone in full possession of herself. She sensed the move coming, but she didn't register it as catastrophic in this reading. It didn't feel like the end of the world for her. That came through pretty clearly. But she did ask, kind of quietly, will I still see her every day, meaning Priscilla? And then she said something that I found very interesting. I can be happy anywhere. Followed almost immediately by, but my preferred situation would be to be with her, meaning Priscilla. She showed me Priscilla's dilemma pretty clearly. There was this push-pull between wanting to keep Zena close and knowing what Zena actually needed, which was more space, more herd, more room to be a horse. And she said something that I want to share verbatim because it really speaks to everything about how Zena perceives Priscilla. She said about Priscilla, you won't sacrifice my well-being for something you'd prefer. You're like that about everything. Your horses come first. Having read Clyde and now Zena, it's really clear to me how much Priscilla loves her animal partners and cares about them and does what's in their best interest instead of what she'd prefer. And it shines right through in everything they feel and communicate. Physically, Zena took the opportunity to show me some old lower back and right hip issues. Nothing painful or limiting, just sort of a faint echo or residue of what once was. Something that had obviously been managed well because she was moving around quite well. And she said very distinctly, I am well taken care of. And I could seriously feel that from her for sure. We closed out that first reading with Zena reminding Priscilla not to fret too much, that everything would work out exactly as it should. So I sent that initial reading to Priscilla, and she came back with more questions, which is when things got interesting, and where I got to see what I think psychologist Donald Winnicott might refer to as the false self, a self that is constructed to protect a true self that's more vulnerable. And I think as I went through the 3 readings that Zena's initial presentation to me was more like a false self than her true self. So we'll get to that as we dive in a little bit more. So Priscilla told me Zena had been weaving along the fence line, pacing, repetitive, and stressed out. She'd never been a weaver before. She was also mouthing a hot wire fencing, which, is dangerous. And these are not behaviors of a calm, grounded philosopher horse. So I told Priscilla that I would go back. So I went back, and this time what I found was different. Zena's first reading felt kind of curated to me, and I said that to Priscilla in our correspondence. She'd been very deliberate about what she showed me. Zena was composed, she was wise, she was well-regulated, and she'd done that very well. That she communicated that very well to me. But underneath that carefully presented version of herself, maybe a version of a false self, there was something more complicated going on. So the second time, I hit a wall of kind of low-level panic. Not full-on crisis, but this kind of sustained, churning anxiety that sits sort of below the surface and drives behavior that would look like from the outside, like acting out. I described it at the time as someone hysterically crying who you can't reach because they can't calm down enough to tell you what's wrong. And that was the kind of energy that was coming back to me from Zena. In the second reading, she was running back and forth along the fence line. I could see that. And I kept hearing, I can't make up my mind. And what came through clearly was kind of an undercurrent of separation anxiety, something that hadn't been triggered in the initial reading, but that the anticipation of the move had totally and utterly activated. She wasn't upset about anything in her life with Priscilla. What she was terrified of was abandonment. And that came through loud and clear. I also noted something that I think is worth talking about here as well, and that's the disconnect between Zena's composed public self and this franker, more frightened private one. It felt less like deception, which some people could make that interpretation, and more like dissociation, or really putting up the false self as a protection, as a shield. 2 versions of the same horse, one she chose to present, and one that sort of ran on its own track underneath. tells me that there is a more complex inner life than most people think horses have. I also felt something physical this time in her energy, a systemic imbalance, not serious, not structural, but something that wanted attention. Felt hormonal, possibly thyroid, and I relayed that message on to Priscilla. It's worth checking. It was worth her checking it out anyway. So on March 29th, Zena made the move, and Priscilla, true to form, reached back out almost immediately. She wanted to know how Zena was doing in real time, so I connected again. And I noticed that the panic was gone, or at least was quite a lot quieter. The frantic energy that had been running so hot in that second reading had leveled out significantly. What came through instead was something I can only describe as stunned. Like Zena felt a little stunned to me, like someone who had been bracing for impact, and then the impact came, and now they are just sort of standing in the aftermath trying to recalibrate. She was a little bit on the outside of the new herd, physically and socially. Certainly not rejected. The herd was very welcoming. But she was just being a little standoffish until she got her wits about her, choosing her perimeter and not quite ready to come in. But as I continue to kind of let the energy of her come through, I got an sensation, kind of this physical exhale or expansion, like someone who's been holding their breath in a small room and finally stepping outside. It felt like her energy had more room to move, more room to stretch, and that was registering as good. Even though she was a little disoriented, I felt like she was in the right place. Zena also showed me a woman, someone at the new place who was caring for the horses, and she lit up a little showing me this. The energy she sent about this woman was specific, that this woman could meet her where she was. No performance required, no curated version needed, just Zena as she is being accepted, as she was in her old home with Priscilla. And I think that was one of her fears, is having to be performative and having to show up a certain way and not just be able to be herself like she was with Priscilla in her old home. I still felt a little bit of separation anxiety that hadn't resolved, but it wasn't driving the bus. And the undercurrent I kept getting was the thought that Zena thought the idea of the move itself was scarier than it actually turned out to be. So finally, the very last part of the reading, the very last reading, after Zena had settled in, she was part of the herd, Priscilla had a couple of questions she wanted me to ask, just to get a sense of, how Zena was feeling, how she felt in her new home. One was, does Zena know I moved her because I love her, or does she think she's been sold or given away or left? And when I connected with Zena for this very last session, what I found was a calm, peaceful horse who understood exactly what had happened to her and why it happened. She was comfortable, she was at peace, and yes, she absolutely knew that the move came from a place of love. It made sense to her now, in a way that things sometimes only make sense after you've lived through them. The separation anxiety had disappeared. She missed Priscilla, that was real, but there was a clean feeling, not panicked, not, the kind of energy that would make you weave through the fence. Just the feeling of someone you love being in another room, not someone you love being gone. So she really realized in the end that, as usual, Priscilla did what she felt was best for Zena instead of what she wanted for herself. So very hopeful energy, and I was very pleased to see that. I think the woman who is in the picture now will be very good for Zena and will really care for her and let her be herself as she was in her old home with Priscilla. So a very interesting beginning and a very, very hopeful ending. I want to pause here for just a second before we get to the animal cards, which I love to pull, and I haven't done a lot of that lately because I've been so busy, but I do love to pull animal cards. Because I think Zena gave us something across these 3 sessions that deserves its own space in terms of a lesson. And I think that lesson is about the gap between the self we present and the self we protect. So Zena showed me a composed, grounded philosopher in our first session, and she wasn't lying. That is genuinely who she is at her core. But she was also choosing what to show. She managed the impression she made, kept the panic off screen, kept the fear tucked away, and presented the version of herself she felt most confident in. And we all do that. Most of us do, anyway. We have a version of ourselves that we offer up, the capable one, the fine one, the one who has processed everything and arrived at wisdom. And underneath that, a more frightened, less resolved self that comes out sideways when the stress gets high enough. That's the true self in some cases. The fence pacing, the mouthing of the hot wire, those were Zena's versions of that. What this says about horses, and what is always so fascinating to me about the advanced beings that they are, is that they are not simple. They are not just reacting to the immediate moment. They are managing their inner lives like we manage our inner lives, presenting themselves, protecting themselves in ways that we rarely give them credit for. Zena's reading is one of the clearest examples I've encountered of an animal with a genuine interior architecture. She had layers. She has agency over which layers she showed. That is sentience, and that is consciousness at work. And that, to me, is fascinating because I think that's the first time I've encountered that in any animal reading I've done in the past 20 years. I think the second lesson that Zena teaches us is about courage, the courage it takes to put someone else's well-being above your own comfort. Priscilla knew before she ever contacted me what the answer was. She knew Zena needed more space, more heard, more room. She just needed to hear it confirmed. And then she acted on it, even though it cost her something real. 4 years of daily contact and that intimacy of having, your animal partner right nearby. That is not a small thing to give up. And Zena knew it. She even said it in the first reading, and she meant it. You won't sacrifice my well-being for something you'd prefer. That line is a portrait of a particular kind of love, the kind that asks over and over, what does this partner actually need, as opposed to what I want to give them or what I want for me. I think that's beautiful, and I think that's such an amazing way to show love to someone, especially your animal partner. And then finally, I think Zena's lesson of don't fret so much, everything works out exactly as it should, is a really great place to end her reading on, because at the core of who she is, I think that aptly describes her orientation toward life. So an amazing reading, full of curveballs and surprises, and a reveal at the end of, the sentience and consciousness that animals have in general. We are going to get to our card pull now, and let's see what our cards have to say. Let's give the cards a shuffle. All right. Let's take our lovely Zena and put her over here. And we have the bat. I find bats so fascinating. Their echolocation is amazing. And the sea serpent. Okay, interesting mix. Let's meet our friend the bat. The bat. Darkness, letting go, death leading to rebirth. Wow. So applicable to this reading. Before emerging, the bat waits for the sun to set and the moon to rise. In the darkness, it can see all that is invisible in the daylight hours. The bat is a master of the subtle senses, of the underlying forces that cause some things to prosper and others to fade. The bat card shows up to signify the ending of a chapter, the closing of a door. The bat comes swiftly, encouraging us to move on. In just a few hours, a new day dawns, no more lingering in the past. Wow, what an apt close to this reading for Zena. When in balance, accepts, adapts, adjusts. When out of balance, refuses to let go and reminisces. To bring into balance, watch the sunrise. So, our friend Zena here experienced all of those things. Refusing to let go, reminiscing, and then finally acceptance, adapting, and adjusting. And she is, I'm happy to say, perfectly happy in her new home. I got an update from Priscilla. She is very pleased with Zena's state and her state of mind. It's fantastic. So the adaptation has occurred. Zena's part of a new herd, and she's loving her new home. So interesting, the bat energy and what it means to this reading and what it means to us. Sometimes we hold on to things that we don't need to hold on to anymore, and they drag us through the mud or drag us back into old lessons that we've already learned. So it's a lesson to all of us to think through, You know, how do we let go? How do we accept things, especially the truth of things as they are? How do we adapt? How do we adjust? Beautiful message. Ah, the sea serpent. It's a long one, of course, because my voice is a little hoarse. All right. Healing emotional wounds, expressing desires. The sea serpent represents the energy of expression, whether it's emotions, creativity, sensuality, or desire. The sea serpent helps us move and direct our energy into a healthy current. When the essence of this card is in balance, we express ourselves creatively and sexually without fear or shame. We know what we desire most. Our hearts are at ease, and our relationships are meaningful and enduring. We loosen the grip of self-judgment, and we let the cool waters of forgiveness in to heal our wounds. When the energy of the sea serpent is not yet activated, our emotions and creativity are left in the muddy waters. The current of expression stagnates in some areas of our lives, and in other places it floods. It's important to remember, no matter what the waters of our emotional lives look like, the sea serpent loves us just the same. Like a mother, she wraps herself around us in a gesture of protection. She supports us as we learn to express our true natures. Also very applicable to Zena here, really learning to express your true nature, and learning to, in her case, get past the curated version of herself, to get to the true self that she needed people to see. She needed to be vulnerable so that people could help her. And I think that's a very powerful message to end this reading on. So thank you, Zena and Priscilla, for allowing me to read for you. I feel honored to have met you both and to have read for you both. And I look forward to any follow-up readings. If you have those, happy to do them, of course. If this reading moved you, please leave a comment below. I don't get a ton of comments, but I read all the ones that I do get. And if you've been watching since Clyde's reading, thank you so much. It means everything to me that you're still here. If you'd like to request a reading for your own animal companion, you can reach me at bbeings411@gmail.com. The full booking instructions are right here in the video description and also in the channel description. And if you haven't already, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Even hit the bell for updates. Every animal I connect with has something amazing to say, and I certainly don't want you to miss it. Until next time, keep listening. Our animal partners have so much to say.